All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Inside in Tennis podcast. Mitch Michals here into late January, all part of the Believe Network. Check out all the great content on Believe and find this podcast on Apple, Spotify, and all your platforms, as well as my YouTube channel at Mitch Michals. We have a lot to discuss. Putting a bow on the Australian Open. The sport moves lightning fast, which we all know. We're already into a new year, one major in the books. Joining me now, one of the premier broadcasters in the game, a professional player in his own right. I was just looking up, actually, his run to the Miami Open final before we started. But Jan-Michael Gambill, welcome back to the show, Jan.
Thanks. It's always good to be back with you, Mitch.
So I want to ask you this perspective before we get to the finals as a player, right? Like it seems like, again, this sport moves so fast and it's constantly a grind and you're just playing all the time and you have to kind of focus and ramp up for these big events. But after a majors in the books, like once you get through Australia, is that when you finally feel like, all right, you're locked in, the season's ready to go? Because it's no other sport like it. I brought this up last week where you go off season right to one of the pinnacle events of the year right away.
Yeah, it is pretty crazy, isn't it? You don't really have a lot of time. Some people aren't ready for the slam because they haven't had enough time off. Players play exhibitions. The end of the year, especially for the men, is so short. The ladies get a little bit more time, which I think is healthier. I think that sometimes there's just too many events, and so here you are trying to take a little time away from the game, and you're thrust right back into it, and you're expected to play well. The pressure is really on the top players to perform, and sometimes they fall a little bit short. Sometimes they're tired. Wasn't necessarily the case if you look at who it was deep into these draws at the Oz Open, but it took them a little while. Even if you talk about Maddie, she played, I thought, pretty well in Auckland, but not. I was surprised she went down in that quarterfinal. I called, I think, her first match there, and I was like, well, she's playing pretty well. Expected to win, but sometimes it just takes a little bit of time, and then you have this huge result if you're one of these players that goes far into the slam. And then you have to deal with the fact that it's what have you done for me lately? It's on to the next. It's the Masters series, Masters 1000, WTA 1000s coming up. It's Miami and Indian Wells, the big ones to look at, and the up close. There's some tournaments in between. It is. You're right. It's a spin cycle, and it just churns away at you all year long.
Yeah, you're right about that too. It's like couple weeks ago, these players might have been practicing on the court, like ramping up or even relaxing, vacation. And then 2 weeks later, you're on a court, center court, court 7, whatever it is, and you got chaos. You got in Australian crowds, you got fans screaming like, "What a whirlwind!"
They were
right?
mean this year too. That crowd was mean. They had the crowd came to play. They picked their favorites and they went with it. That crowd reminded me of like the mean New York crowd you sometimes get. Sometimes, for me, it was always the Paris crowd. They didn't like me very much. Don't know why, but maybe because I hated the clay, and that kind of carried through with my attitude in Paris. But the Aussies are usually so friendly, but there was a lot of hostile ones this year, and it was good for me. It's something to talk about. It was Danielle going crazy with them making an enemy. It was just a whole lot, and them booing Novak when he got hurt. I mean, it was a lot to sort of take in, talk about, read about on X. Do we call it X now? I guess. So
but it was. You're right. There was
a lot.
Yeah, it was crazy and I get it. Like it's a rowdy environment. There's certain players that are going to take it a certain way. Danielle Collins isn't going to take it lying down. I think we all know that. So
I love her.
I thought that was entirely entertaining.
It was so much fun.
It was. The other thing you said that's true, though, about this tournament, the players that do well seem to be the ones that prepare properly, have a good offseason, and come in maybe fit. I mean, fitness matters in tennis in general. Totally. But this tournament, you have to be very fit to start the ground running like this.
You do, and because especially a lot of the fortnight was pretty hot, wasn't it? Those last few days was sort of fortunate that it got a little cooler, so that was nice for the players. But it wasn't that way, though, for the most of the tournament. It was hot out there, and that's a really tough place to play when it's like that for everybody. Both players are in, of course, the same situation. But I like the dry heat in Australia. For me, it was the old rebound ace courts that I never had great results in Australia because that ball was just out of my strike zone. I hated those courts. The new courts, I think they're awesome. I wish I had a chance to actually play on those. But I think it's a nice, fair court for everybody. And you have really entertaining points, and it's a little bit faster.
Certainly was. Well, you mentioned her name, the star of the tournament, the story of the tournament for a lot of ways, and a lot of respect to the other champions who won in the singles and the doubles and the juniors even. But Madison Keys has her moment. She's now officially a major champion. She beats Aryna Sabalenka in the final in 3 sets, a thrilling 7-5 finish in that one. And we'll get to the run in a second, Jan Mike, but just that match itself. Keys comes out ready to play. There was no moment, no worry that she wasn't ready or wasn't prepared for the moment. She certainly was. Sabalenka pushed back like all great champions do. That third set was as good of a women's tennis match. The level in that was as good as anything we've seen. Yet the story of the tournament, the story of that match, Jan Mike, was that in the face of adversity, Keys didn't waver. Every service game was a battle. Sabalenka was fighting, but time after time she made the shots. She came up with the points when she needed them.
Yeah.
There's nothing like, and I know that there's nothing like winning a major, especially the first one, but the way she did it was unbelievably impressive, and full marks to Keys for becoming a champion at long last.
Well, they've got it figured out. Bjorn Frantangelo, her husband and coach, he's got such a nice, cool, calm demeanor. He gets information to her in a way that's like digestible, I think, if you listen to him in the sidelines. So they've really finally got that dynamic, which is important, the on-court, off-court figured out. She switches her racket, right? So she's doing some different things to change the game, make her be a little bit more consistent. I've never seen her be that consistent for that long from the baseline. Whether it's Maddie's choice or Bjorn having a little influence in there too, she's taken a few more balls cross court, staying in the rallies a little bit longer, because if you want to go against Sabalenka, you must, because that's one of the things that she did when you think about it. She became more consistent, and that's why she was able to do all this amazing stuff she's done the last few years, because she's more consistent with her power. She makes good choices. She throws in some variety with those drop shots that she's hitting. People were, I don't know why the commentary was a little surprised she's hitting drop shots. She's been doing that for a while.
Right.
But with all that power, that sort of opens up that opportunity. But when you talk about Maddie, I was so happy to see her become more consistent. Now it gives her that choice, go big and be consistent.
Yeah.
You're right. That third set was one of the best sets I've seen in a long, long time. 5-all, 30-all, that forehand that she hit was the tournament. That was it. That was unbelievable, because that return was an unbelievable return from Sabalenka right at her, which just makes it difficult to create some angle, and she just nails it right in the corner. I mean, I kept thinking, she's don't make an error, pulling for her so hard. I love Sabalenka, but two-time defending champ, I think it's okay to have Keys take one of them, and the final was amazing, but the semi against Swiatek, that's also unbelievable.
So she beat. So the run that Keys made was Collins, Rybakina. I was like laughing. Collins, Rybakina, Svitolina, Swiatek, Sabalenka.
Right.
Like that's just stone cold to go through all those players. And think about too, like what was the narrative? And some of it was a little unfair, but some of it was fair, that the consistency wasn't there, that in big moments she didn't come through for an entire tournament. She can beat top players, but in majors had not done this.
Well, I think
8 years since the final.
It's all fair. Yeah. It's not criticizing her character at all. It's criticizing her choices she makes sometimes in her tennis. I played a little bit of the same kind of tennis. It's big. You make an error, you got to shrug it off. You go on to the next. But if you make an error at the wrong time, you lose a match. So you go too big up the line, too close to the line. You're changing direction too early, whatever it might be. The big first serve's not above 60% from her. For her, that matters. Those kinds of things matter. If you look at the second set, the serve fell off heavily against Saba in that second set. And then she reclaimed it in the third. And all those 30-all games, she needed that to work,
Yeah.
And it did.
She said
that's...
Yeah. She said in her comments, too, she felt like, she was in, she acknowledged Sabalenka was playing good tennis, but she's like, so am I. I'm in this. Like, why can't I come through? And she did. And that's part of it, too, right? To be able to, as long as you're an active player, Jan, like, you have the ability to rewrite the narrative and to do what she did at her age. Remember, this is someone who was turned pro as a teenager, has made a lot of money, a lot of runs. 8 years ago, made that major final, didn't go her way. To stay at it this long, and as she said, get over the dark times. And last year, or 2 years ago, acknowledge that maybe I won't win a major championship. I'm going to keep trying, but I don't have to put all my eggs in that basket. She had a very clear focus, and I keep coming back to be able to figure it out later in your career is even more remarkable and special.
And it agreed. And maybe it just took her that long to mature. You got to give Sloane credit, because she played unbelievable in that final at the Open, those few years ago. And just her ground strokes were too good on the day. She returned so well, put the pressure on. And Maddie was a little nervous in that. Why wouldn't you be nervous in the final? Of course you're going to be nervous. So this helped her to be there again, have had it happen before. And she just was calmer, more mature. And tell you what, I wouldn't be surprised if she's able to win another one at some point. I mean, she's got the confidence. She's the right man in her corner. She's married the right guy. It's a good combo, and
Yeah.
it's got her really kind of forward thinking. It's she's more in this tunnel vision, which you need as an athlete, than sort of all these distractions. Everybody's saying, "Oh, well, you have the game to do it. You should do it. You should do it." Well, okay,
Yeah.
you know, whatever. People say stuff. People are always chapping away, all the time.
Yeah.
So it's good that she's got that, she's just focused, and all that kind of disappears.
Yeah, really cool scene to see her win. Also, I should point out too,
Awesome.
we mentioned it a little bit last week, but the racket change too, the technology change, not an easy decision for a pro to make. Switching up her racket, which you can speak on, and it's not like she had been failing; like she was still a legitimate top 20 player. To do that as well is a big commitment.
It is, because the last thing you want to do is second guess yourself. It's like when you have an
Mhm.
injury and you think, "Oh, am I going to get injured again?" Those are all things that sort of build up. That when she got hurt at Wimbledon, like, is that going to happen again? All these things sort of in your mind. It was easier for me. I can speak for myself, but I think it's easier when you're just a kid coming up and you don't really have any worries, as long
Yeah.
as you're not worried about, you have funds to play, and you're just trying to play tennis, and all of a sudden, life kind of hits you like a freight train, and
Mhm.
the pressure becomes something different, then you're in trouble. So those people that can kind of have that not be an issue are the ones that
Yeah.
really can perform, and
Yeah.
it
And
seems like
yeah.
she picked the racket and she went with it. Forget it. It's we're doing it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, you don't have to make friends in the locker room. You're there to be a professional athlete, but she's very popular. You were seeing the reaction. One of the more popular, one of the more commented on by other peers, how happy they were for her to win, which is another good thing to see.
Yeah, I mean, she's as likable of a person as you ever meet. Forget she's an athlete. She's just a lovely
Mhm.
person. She talks about kindness all the time. It's her charity work. She does nice things for people. You just want to cheer for her, and it's a so happy, so very
Mhm.
happy. That's one of the, I live in Hawaii. I'm in Hawaii, and so with a lot of these matches are like in the middle of the night. It's like, do
Yeah,
I want to wake up to watch tennis, or am I gonna just go to sleep? This was like, I was so happy to be awake
yeah.
for these matches.
Well, Sabalenka falls one match short of an iconic three-peat, and again, Keys' level amazing. Sabalenka has nothing to be ashamed of. I guess we should say too. I kind of think I know where your wavelength is. I didn't have an issue with her reaction after the match. Just to comment on it, she threw her racket and she was upset. But look, that shows that they care. There's real stakes here. Again, the counter would be, do you want her to not care and be invested? Like, come on.
She could break that racket in half over her knee. I mean,
Yeah,
she's an intense individual. I love
yeah.
Sabalenka. I love watching her play. She's an amazing ambassador for support. She's funny.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, and she said that she needed to get that intensity out of her system. People are knocking that? This is professional tennis.
No, I
People
I
need to
don't think
get
many
over it.
are. Yeah,
People need to get
yeah.
over it. It's the people are Some
Hmm.
players, Rafa never did. Some players
Hmm.
are going to break rackets. It
Hmm.
is what it is. I broke way too many than I should have, but it's for way
Yeah,
less reason than Saba. I mean, so what?
yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't even like even that didn't even register for me.
I think too, like in thinking about her tennis, one of the things is fair to say is like her best form comparing to what she was and this iconic player wasn't quite there the whole run. She didn't look her absolute apex tip top shape. The other side of that too is it's hard to stay on top. There's a fatigue with winning all the time and having the pressure of you've won this two in a row. People expect you to do it. So it's admirable
Right.
she got this far, but it is very hard to stay on top, let
I think that's
alone
what
the
makes
sport.
you think about the best players, and that's what makes them kind of scary. Is you're right. Maybe she wasn't at her best tennis. What does
Mhm.
that mean? She's hitting winners left and right all the time, because that's kind of what she does when she's playing her
Yeah.
best tennis. Um, it still took an exceptional athlete and at an exceptional level to take her out. So her,
Yeah.
let's call it her B plus tennis, because I don't think it was
Mhm.
B tennis from Sabalenka. I
Mhm.
think it was still pretty high level.
Mhm.
And she struggled a little bit in some of her matches, and that helps her character. I think that this loss might make her a little more fearsome on the year. We'll see how she comes out of that, because it could make her doubt herself, but I don't think that's the case. She said it's on to the next. I'm excited for my next match competing, and
Mhm.
um, you just got to hand it to Madison. She just played a little bit better in the third set.
Yeah, it was special. It was special to see. Yeah, Sabalenka's still the most consistent player in the majors the last, 3, 4 years. She's just going deep, semis about everyone. So for her, yeah, you can't win them all. She's still good on clay too. So maybe that's the next move when it gets to that point. Can she break through there?
It's gonna be tough to beat Iga on the clay.
Yeah,
It is.
Iga who looks better. I mean, even in this tournament, again, Keys, it's the match point down theory, right? Keys had to save a match point.
Yeah.
And that point, by the way, was the point that I think, I don't want to say opened it up, but in my mind, I was watching it thinking, Keys match point, Iga serving. She just served it. She just returned it right at her feet. Didn't take any chances. Didn't go for a line.
Big
just
up the
right
middle.
at her feet.
Yeah.
It was like, wow, this is a smart player too. So again, now is the question of what happens here. There is a scenario where her mind's free, the pressure's gone, and she could play some of her best tennis. This is a life-changing moment. Winning a major, you are now a major champion. It's going to impact, obviously, future earnings, but also how you were introduced and what your legacy has changed in an instant.
Absolutely. I mean, she's good. She's good on life, and she's done it. She's won the slam, but this probably will make Maddie a little hungrier. I think she's been in the Open final. I like her chances on hard courts. I like her chances on the grass if she can keep her footing. Grass is a little bit of a crapshoot because you take a wrong step and you're in trouble. You slip. But I still like her chances on it. If she serves as well as she did in Australia, for the most part, she's going to be pretty solid on that surface too. So. But I've always thought, and belong amongst other people, that she had the game to do it, and that's probably what annoys her so much. She's kind of like, okay. And then the press.
It's true. It's also like it feels right. A lot of players are good people. A lot of people you think, it'd be great if they won a major, but it feels right that she's got a major. Like she seemed like she had the game, deserved it, and it just feels right that she finally has one.
Right. I mean, you win a major, you're given an opportunity to be a greater ambassador for the sport, and you couldn't find a better one than Maddie Keys will be and has been.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And the last thing on the women, now we have the rankings are out. Keys up to 7, 4 in the top 10. Coco, Pegula, Keys, and Emma Navarro. So 4 American women in the top 10. It's been a while, I think, since that's happened.
U.S. tennis is on the up. It's been on the up. The women have been doing great for a while. Well, the men have really stepped up. We have 2 guys in the top 10 now as well.
Yeah.
And that's pretty amazing. It's been that a little bit, but I feel like Tommy's level is kind of just staying up there. So welcome to the top 10 for Tommy Paul, and Taylor's level has just been so good for the last couple of years, and have him at number 4. I think that's really inspiring these other guys to play well. Obviously, Shelton had an amazing Australian Open again. This guy's a major threat on the hard courts. I mean, so far, the 2 semifinals and slams, and when's he going to break through? I think he has the game to do it. Can he beat Sinner? Well, I don't know if anybody can beat Sinner right this second on a hard court. But
and American men, there's 4 in the top 20 with Korda, I think 22, so it's 5 in the top 25. It's like an arms race with Italy right now. It's like the 2 countries that are pacing it. Shelton, and just to touch on him, you watch him play, right? Even from the outside, you understand why people are backing his long-term potential, because there's so much raw ability there. But it's going to take, some honing in to get to the level of, are you going to contend for majors with the absolute best? He's still a little raw, I think it's safe to say.
I think the raw is fun. I think the way that he plays with a little bit of chaos is actually fun, because you don't know what you're going to get. Is he going to slap a 400, 110 miles an hour, or hit aces? Is he going to kick the serve? Is he coming forward? What's he going to do? Is he decide to stay in the rallies?
Yeah.
That makes him hard to play, and I think it makes him hard to play, especially in 3 out of 5 sets, where you see him sort of have better results in the slams, which is great. He talked about his fitness, really coming up at this Australian Open. It showed. He had a great tournament, and he just needs more of that. He does have to buy into the fact that he needs to be more consistent against certain players. He's going to have to be able to rally with a Sinner from the baseline, I think, a little bit longer. That's a decision. Can he do a little bit more with his backhand? I think that holds him back against a Sinner who's just about as good off the forehand and the backhand, whereas Ben can't really hit the backhand big and hurt his opponents. He'll change direction and do some good ones, but it's really the forehand, isn't it, that's the big weapon from the baseline. So there's some things that I think that they can still improve, but the guy is performing and he's playing great, and he's still so young and has one of the best serves in the game. So It's tough to say, but he has to make that decision. It can't be his
Yeah.
dad. He's gonna have to say, I really feel like I can win one of these tournaments, beat these best guys. But I think that that's what it needs to happen. A little bit more pattern play, and
Yeah.
then throw the chaos in. You
Right.
know,
It might take taking a step backwards to take two steps forward too. It's some of these long-term commitments to see if he's going to, make adjustments to his game. Like we were talking at the beginning, there's not really a full off season to kind of do it. So
no, there's
sometimes
not.
you have
There's
to,
not. I mean, you get like a month, and then two of
yeah.
them in that month, too. At least a week of that better be vacation. It should be two,
Well,
really.
he's
I
on
mean,
that.
it's like
He's
not
kind
enough.
of, yeah. It's like the Alcaraz, even Tiafoe, like the exhibition circuit too. It's hard
Oh,
to say no, but then you're sacrificing some maybe time to work.
I mean,
So
you have this like finite now it's grown. It used to be like about 10, 12
mhm,
years, right? And now it's
mhm,
probably for a player who stays fit, doesn't get hurt, it's longer, 15 plus years of
mhm.
look at Novak, the guy.
Well, that's a bad example. Yeah,
But it's a bad example.
yeah,
But there's
yeah.
other players that have been playing. You can keep playing
Right.
a lot longer, keep your body in
Uh-huh.
shape and not get hurt, and have the money to have a physio coming with you or whatever it is,
Right.
that keeps you in that form.
Mhm.
Some of it is making a good decision on what time with your schedule. What time am I taking off? Do you turn down the exhibitions where it's ridiculous money like that? I don't know. It's a tough fit. That's a tough one to turn down. Again, you can do those exos after. Depends on who you are. These
Yeah.
guys are going to have opportunities for a long time. They're all great personalities and stuff, but somebody offers you $500,000 or whatever it might be to go play a tennis match in some nice place, by the way. So you think, oh, it's
Yeah.
kind of a vacation anyway.
Right. Yeah. It's a tough
I
one.
don't know.
We got more with Jan-Michael Gambill here on the Inside In Tennis podcast. We're talking about the Australian Open. It was a phenomenal run. On the men's side, we did have a repeat champion. Jannik Sinner does it again. 3 straight hard court majors, wins Australia again, beats Zverev in straight sets. Second set was a tie break. The other sets were pretty thoroughly won by Sinner. 3 major titles coming into his own, 23 going on 24, top seed, number 1 in the world. There's not really much more to say other than how impressive and how solid he was. The last 3 matches, Demon Hour into Shelton,
Just
into Zverev, just swatting him away like flies. It's impressive just the growth that we've seen from this guy in the last 3-4 years, how he's complete, how
right.
He doesn't really have weaknesses out there anymore.
No, he certainly doesn't. I mean, the big thing that for him was improving the serve, wasn't it? The serve wasn't really a weapon early in his
Mm-hmm.
career, and he was a little bit skinny. He put on a little bit of muscle, and now the guy's torquing these serves. He's serving huge. Uh, no break in the final. I believe that was the case against
Mm-hmm.
Zverev. That's one of the best returners in the game. If you take Novak out of there, he's probably the best returner in the game. Zverev, he puts a lot of pressure on his opponents, and so to not be broken and to kind of just cruise on through, it's unbelievable. I mean, it was almost. Now, I'm more of an Alcaraz fan. I like the energy of that type of a player, so I kind of gravitate towards that intensity a little bit more. But you can really appreciate Sinner and how well he's hitting the ball and just how fearsome he is to try to go up against. And he's got that that
Yeah.
aura that the top players have, that people
Mm-hmm.
don't want to go out on the court against him. And when you talk
Yeah.
about Deminar and then Shelton and then Zverev, those are pretty different players. Zverev a little bit more like Deminar, if you could say anything like their ground
But
strokes.
that's a good point. Like that
But Shelton's nothing like that.
he beat 3 different types of players. Yeah, that's a
Yeah, exactly.
good
All the
point.
straight sets. So he
And
loses what? He lost 2 sets in the whole tournament.
yeah, the Holger match where he wasn't feeling well, that was a resistance that he had. But another thing you brought up, no breaks. He didn't face a break point. And shout out to our guy Gil Gross with the stat. I had to double check that. I think it's 3 out. I think it's 3 players in major finals have had that happen. You're talking about like Sampras and Rafa, obviously. So, or Federer and Rafa rather. So yeah, no break points. Zverev couldn't even get a sniff on his serve. Also, and I was going to ask you this too:
Ridiculous.
his ability corner to corner and how to defend and turning into offense. That's something that has been developed and a real weapon now. He's gotten stronger, because it starts with his leg drive and his ability to move. But his defense out of the corner and hitting winners from those spots,
It's
Mike, is just
crazy.
sensational.
So I was a fan of Sampras's, and I sort of emulated his serve, and I also, because I had this weird 200 forehand that sort of hampered me in the corner, I needed to have a one-hander. And what I did was sort of like, okay, Pete goes really big on that first one in the corner and just crushes it. And that forehand was designed to get him to the net. He was such a good net player. Mine was designed so that I could sort of, I wasn't anywhere near the net player of Pete, what I tried to do is get back in attacking form in the rally. So when I was behind, I wasn't going to win, you know? So it was that big forehand of the corner, and it worked. It worked quite well for me to get sort of back ahead in points, back in points, surprise guys, with this sort of a laser beam type of a shot. What Sinner does is just hit the crap out of it on both the backhand and the forehand, and he can do it corner to corner. He did it last year at the Open, and I've never seen a player hit the ball like that out of the corner consistently and just constantly. It's like, what do you do to this guy? Where do you even attack him? Where do you attack him? I mean, I don't think anybody, at least on a hard court where he can move the way he wants to move, I don't think people know right now. Maybe ask Alcaraz, is the one that has the best results against him.
Yeah, he's the only one. He beat him multiple times last year. Yeah, so there was yeah.
Yeah, and what Carlitos does do is he's able to hit the heavier ball. He does a lot of slicing, hits the drop shots, so he's keeping him sort of guessing a little bit more than other players. Where, you know, Zverev is so good at what he does, but he's a little easier to read, and you know, for a Sinner, there's not as much surprises coming. So, and Sinner, I think at this Australian Open returned exceptionally well, also. So that's just so much pressure to deal with that.
I was going to say, so the result to combat with him is be one of the best athletes in all sports. That's how you do it.
Do that.
Be an Alcaraz level.
Easy.
It's also crazy, the consistency in just his year and his results. Zverev's ranked number 2. Sinner's got him by almost 4,000 points. That's the gap between 1 and 2.
I read a stat. I mentioned that Sinner is in the amount of time he's been number 1, he's got the highest win rate, or he's up there with some crazy names. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, and when you think about generational talents and a player like him, it's also the maturity, the mental side of it too. I mean, you don't even have to get into the stuff he's dealing with off the court, that the court date in April, but just the fact that it's distractions, it's being number 1, it's all the obligations, it's the expectations, like we were talking about. Nothing really seems to faze this guy when ball's in play and it's time to win majors.
Again, it's that tunnel vision that I talked about with Maddie Keys that she has figured out. However she figured that out, Sinner hasn't figured out, because he is dealing with some stuff coming up, could get suspended. People have been talking about it. I mean, it's not even really for me to talk about. We don't have all the information, so it's really talk about the tennis, and what'll happen will happen. But that has to be weighing on him a little. But maybe he's able to shove it to the side, and I'll deal with that when I'm off the court. There's nothing he can do about it when he walks out there. So might as well try to play the best tennis that he can.
I was looking at Zverev and thinking about this the other day. 9 Grand Slam semifinals, most ever for someone that's never won a major. Now 0-3 in finals, and the resume is pretty solid except for the major championship. He, wasn't really, this is the first time he's had a loss that's looked like it's outwardly affected him. We know there could be, things in private, but outwardly was pretty gutted. And I heard Jim Courier say he's got to be more offensive in these matchups, because as it is right now, defense doesn't win it. Do you buy into the fact that he's maybe a little too tentative when playing in these elite matches against these elite players?
Well, he served for it against Team at the Open, didn't he? I mean, that match, and that match was the match where I thought, okay, he's hitting his forehand bigger than I've ever seen him hit it. And there he was right there. So did he choke there in that? I don't know. I've watched the match a couple times. I've seen at least that game, especially. I don't know if he choked, but he missed some forehands. But it's like that. I think that helped him be the player now that he sort of is, if you're talking just about his tennis. This one, he just got blitzed. I mean, it wasn't a close match. In fact, it was kind of a match where I'm sitting on the couch and I was kind of like, okay, I got to find my phone, and I've got to this is not close enough for me to be really into it. First set was close, but does he need to be more offensive? Probably against Sinner. I mean, you're not going to, who's beating Sinner on defense?
That's the point, right? It's like when you're playing the very best, like if you're talking Alcaraz and Sinner.
Right. He might get away with Alcaraz who makes more errors.
Right. But we're essentially
different players.
We're essentially saying that they're better. Like they're better players. They're ranked higher. They have more weapons, things to do. Zverev can beat them and has beaten them, but he probably has to go a little bold. It's a fine line too, because you don't want to be reckless. You want to be in these points, but it's going to take a lot. He can beat them, but the mental fatigue is what I keep coming back to, because you lose at the highest level. You get that close too many times. You gotta find a way to keep believing and keep putting the work in, because it's tough. It's clearly weighing on him mentally at this point.
I mean, is it though? I mean, he's just another final. I mean, he's just right now, Sinner's just a better player in those moments. So I don't know. I mean, is it weighing on him? Probably. Obviously, the stuff that he's dealing with off court, that's got to be tough. It's got to be tough. I mean, and so it is what it is. I wasn't there. I don't know what happened.
And not to get into that too, but I do think though that when you get that close and don't have a championship, and the older you get, I know he's still under 30. He'll be, I think, 29 this year.
Right.
It's maybe safe to say he's got less tennis in front of him than behind him at the professional level. So you're starting to think, is it going to happen?
Look at
because he's. Yeah.
I mean, we're always so quick to sort of take away from these players that he's been in 3 Slam finals. So pressure's on him. Look how many Masters 1000s the guy won? Is it 6?
It's a lot.
7?
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. But that's the thing, is like, you can make the argument right now, if his career ended today, he could be the best player that's never won a major.
Yeah, you probably.
And I know he doesn't want that. He's done so much consistently, tour to tour, has the gold medal. But to get to this point, it's brutal. I mean, best of 5 against a Jannik Sinner on hard court, like that. Alcaraz on clay, he's up 2-1. Played a pretty good match.
Did.
Alcaraz elevated, played really smart tactically in sets 4 and 5. It's tough. And again, it's almost like we're saying he didn't choke, he didn't blow it. He got beat by a better player. Maybe could have tried to go bigger at the risk of, making a lot of errors and making mistakes. It's tough. It's an enviable position in some ways. But
I mean, it's the only one you can say that something happened in his brain probably was the Open against team. I mean, when you're that big dude, big serve, you should hold there. You should. That doesn't mean you're gonna. That's never how tennis seems to work. But you put yourself in that moment, and you hope you can get through it. I didn't do it, so I'm not gonna attack the guy for that. I think his career has just been unbelievable. I think he'll still find himself. He's number 2 in the world.
Yeah. I would say though it's weird, right? Because I would say Clay's probably his best. Like, if we're talking on, he can do well. I mean, even Grass has been the best, but he's still consistent there. It's probably Clay, given, I mean, if you'd agree with that, given not just also the game, given who else is out there, Jannik Sinner being the main one on hard courts.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be Alcaraz won it as far as like the tough competitor. I mean, you have other guys that could beat him on that surface, and he's so consistent. And again, he's one of the best returners, if not the best returner in the game. Novak still would be considered that. Hopefully Novak's injury is not a thing that's going to hold him back too long. But who knows how long Novak can play? Maybe it's another 5 years. Who knows? I don't know. This guy's unbelievable. But Zverev will have opportunities because he returns so well and the serve is so good. So he never goes away in matches. He might get a little bit tight, but I didn't see that as the case or the reason he lost to Jannik Sinner.
I agree with you.
Sinner's just a bullet train zipping on through, and it's like there's nothing to hold him back.
The race is on though now with him and Alcaraz. So we got 4 and 3, and they're still pretty young. So buckle up, everybody, because they're going to start collecting majors. I mean, there are going to be younger players coming up, other players that can still win it.
Sure,
but we got the 2 alpha dogs. If you weren't sure before, it is a 2-horse race. So.
I like also that they're very different personalities, so that's fun as well. That's sort of let the game grow with them.
Well, I wanted to wrap up the singles side of the men's, but obviously with Djokovic and given his tournament and getting past Alcaraz too. I mean, beating Carlos again, remarkable. He's injured on that Monday match. Kept it pretty close to the vest, I think it's safe to say. Plays that hour 20 set against Zverev, loses in a tight tiebreak, misses the volley, and then that's it. Handshake out, over before you even knew what happened. So it was something to see, right? Like that it happened so fast. Unfortunately, he couldn't keep going. Not shocking, given that he was legitimately injured, Jan Mike. But what's your takeaway on the Australian fortnight for Djokovic, getting to the semis, beating Alcaraz, but ultimately it was an injury that ended his tournament?
Well, I watched the Alcaraz match and I started saying, I think it's going to be Novak. I think he might win this thing. I think he could do it. finds ways to win these matches and has answers. He's got the. I mean, he's the GOAT. I mean, what do you say? He's unbelievable. He's unbelievable, and for him to perform that well and be in another situation where he could possibly win, but then the injury stopped him. There is no way that he could have played that match and he would have played it. He would crawl out there if he possibly could win.
Yeah.
And hit the ball with his teeth, and they wouldn't be surprised if he hit a winner that way. So it's like it's unfortunate. It was unfortunate for the fans that they didn't get a semifinal there. I think the booing was ridiculous, but I also wasn't there. I don't know. I mean, why make him a villain there? He would have played. It's just
Right. It's better than no tennis. Like, and not to bring up one of his rivals, but Nadal wasn't able to play against Kyrgios in that Wimbledon semi, and it was no match.
Right.
So I think I'm with you 100%.
There was a little more going on there with that Rafa Kyrgios. Like they
Yeah.
have a thing, and I don't think he wanted to give him that satisfaction to walk off the court.
Yeah.
I think that was fair. In fairness,
Right.
I don't think I would have if I was Rafa, and because Kyrgios probably would have just taken him out, and he probably would have ended up retiring anyway. Rafa was all he could against Taylor in that quarter.
Yeah, it's the same thing with Djokovic, right? Like, he obviously wasn't in a condition to finish the match. He would have. We know what majors mean to him. We know what that's his priority. Over 20 in the sun too. Like, that first set was brutally long.
Brutal.
Staring down the barrel of a couple more of them, it would have been tough. The reports came out that he didn't hit he said by his own admission he didn't hit a tennis ball for 2 days since the Monday match. Right. Practice didn't go the warm-up didn't go so hot. It was tough. I'm just hopeful that it was, a tear, a strain in that neighborhood, that he'll be able to hit the ground running. We'll see with, the Sunshine Double, but hopefully by clay, because he didn't get to finish his clay campaign last year. But if this level is any indication, he's firmly in the mix, because he took out a pair of really good Czech players in Mahac and Lehečka, beat Alcaraz, which is very hard to do if anybody can. And Absolutely. Then gave Zverev a battle on one leg, essentially. So I'd be optimistic, as long as, again, it's the big qualifier, big if. But if the injury is not a serious one, I'd be very optimistic for him.
Yeah, I mean, Novak doesn't need to play Indian Wells in Miami at this point. He's gunning for slams. I'm not speaking for Novak, but that's what it looks like. He'd love to win more Masters 1000s and add to his crazy pot of those tournaments. But I think that he's focused on the slams and playing well and being injury-free. And if he's not injury-free, he's probably not going to play tournaments just to play tournaments. Why do that? That would make no sense. He can get his level back. He is one of those players that needs a few tournaments, so he needs a couple lead-ins to like he could skip the entire hard court season coming up and then play some clay and play Rome, play Spain and whatever, play Madrid and then play the French. If the injury is such that it holds him back, that would be a good play for him. I mean, he's got a pretty good life. He can go live it for a little while. That's not the worst thing in the world. He seems like he's a great dad, and he's doing that stuff. So, I hope for Novak, because I always hope for every player, because I was injured and couldn't go out on my own terms. I always hope for whoever they are that they can go out on their own terms, and so I wish that for Novak. I mean, he posted that thing on online of his knee. It's his knee, right? It's his knee.
Yeah, I think it's a little higher up, but yeah, I mean, he was frustrated. He had
that
yeah.
MRI, and it looked like, I mean, there's something there. The guy's limping around. I mean,
frustrated was a good way to put it for him, because the media stuff, then the crowd reaction. But look, again, like, he had the measuring stick of he beat Alcaraz. He's proven he can do it. Tough one for Alcaraz, though, right? Like, have you ever been in that situation where you maybe lose a tough match and then the guy retires the next round and you're just thinking, like, man, that was tough? Because I wonder what Alcaraz's reaction was.
That happens.
Yeah. Well,
Alcaraz just seems to smile and shrug it off. He's got the most shiny disposition and sunshiny disposition of anybody I've ever seen. It's so weird to see him congratulate. Like me, I'm curmudgeon, furious, go stare at the wall. Never had results like Alcaraz, but had pretty good results. And you lose a match, and I literally would go sit in a hotel room and just stare at the wall the rest of the day. That was my day. And usually, what I would try to do is the next day, okay, let's have an open mind, let's go practice, and get on with it, because you're going to lose most weeks. It's just the way that the beast works. But Alcaraz is on there congratulating everybody on his social media, and I'm like, God, this is a nice guy.
Yeah.
Way nicer than me. Works for him.
Yeah, it was an absolute blast to watch. Again, the Australian Open, the men's side, Jannik Sinner, the women's side, Maddie Keys. It was phenomenal stuff. And I do want to mention quickly, though, I want to mention the doubles side of things. Taylor Townsend and Siniakova get the women's crown. Taylor Townsend, Siniakova, two slams now. Good to see Taylor on the mountaintop after all she's been through. Siniakova is like she's her resume is pretty unassailable.
She's a doubles goddess. I mean, it's
10 majors, 2 gold medals, and not yet 30. So
amazing. And then with Taylor out there on the court, who's probably the best volleyer in the game, you just a nasty combination to come up against. That's not a lot of fun for their opponents. So
that was a fun match. That was a fun match against Ostapenko, Shea Sway, because I love that duo. Shea Sway just like doesn't hit the ball with any power whatsoever, but knows geometry. It's like she studied math of tennis perfectly.
She's incredible.
She's incredible.
And I love Ostapenko. There's always something fun with Ostapenko in matches. I have to call out Jagger Leach making the boys semifinals. So I was working a little bit with him before he went to Australia here in Hawaii, and it was a lot of fun to see him excel, and he's going to hopefully have a great year, I think. And also Tristan Boyer, who I've worked with a bit, and as late as last year at the Open, and he qualified finally to Slam and won his first round. So it's so nice to see those two guys doing well, but some sneaky Americans might be coming up and playing some great tennis as well.
We talked about that too with Mickelson and Leonard Tien, obviously.
Yeah,
good runs. Just the Californians coming out big in this one. And then on the men's side of the doubles, Henry Patton, Harry Heliovaru win another major. It's the same. Wimbledon champs to Aussie Open champs, men's and women's were the same. So shout out to them. And then John Peers and Olivia Gadecka, the Aussies, winning mixed doubles. So a lot of different trophies, a lot of different celebrations there. Putting a bow on the first slam of the year. It was an eventful one. Again, crowd reactions, some media stuff, great tennis, interesting dynamics, but we got one in the rear view. And now it's time for the rest of the season. And, like we said, it's your perspective too as the player, right? Like you go into February, it's the only month it doesn't have a Masters or a major. You got to stay focused, all right? That's the key, to just keep your head down. And if you're a top player, you have bigger events on the horizon. But if you're a mid-level ranked player, this is some real opportunity for you to get your ranking up and your profile up.
Yeah, it really is. There's a couple tournaments coming up. It's before those Masters events that are coming to put some points on, to get some matches, to be ready for the hard court season, and sort of make your mark, like you said. There's each week is an opportunity, and you have to have that mindset.
I can't wait to see just what the next chapter of some of these players looks, and as they grow, as they get championships, as they get runs. Some of the young Americans, you said, that taste of greatness, where it goes from there. Yeah. If you're like a player like Werner or like Mickelson, you've kind of got yourself out there now. Now you're in the game, you're in the mix, so it's pretty cool to see. But
keep an eye on Tristan Boyer for this year. I think that he's gonna. I think he set himself up to have a really good year. He played great on the clay at the end of the year. He's figured out the hard courts now. I wouldn't be surprised to have him see a little breakthrough from him.
I mean, Boyer, like I was saying, Marcos Carone. There's a lot of American
Marcos just keeps getting better as he gets older. That's great.
Yeah, he's got to hook me up. He's got to hook me up with some of that Vori stuff, though. Next time I get him on the show, I'm going to ask him for some free merch. But no, shout out to him. Well, Jan-Michael Gambill, this was a blast. We got a lot of tennis to talk. Really appreciate you coming on the show. It's always a pleasure. Thanks for coming on.
Aloha.
That was Jan-Michael Gambill. This was the Inside In Tennis Podcast. We're on all your favorite platforms, Spotify, Apple, you name it. Check us out, subscribe, leave a rating or a review there, as well as check out the YouTube video episodes of this podcast at Mitch Michals there, and just subscribe along to join the show. We're back in a little bit. More tennis. The grind doesn't stop. The podcast doesn't stop. So we'll keep keeping you up to date with all the happenings on the ATP and WTA Tour. For Jan-Michael Gambill, I'm Mitch Michals. This was the Inside In Tennis Podcast. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you soon.